All right. So we're here. Go ahead, Liz. You've got this one.
Yeah, so I thought this was a pretty cool little blog post from the producers of Burp Suite, listing the top 10 from 2019, and it's actually a pretty good little article because it actually links to the studies, which I always kind of like. But I thought it was interesting too because we got a lot of the old classic standbys here, stuff that has been around forever. Like cross-site scripting vulns are still in the top 10 list of problems because they're still out there in the wild. And one of the stories I almost picked this time was for yet another massive WordPress vulnerability for a plugin it's used all over the internet. And it just goes to show you that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
But the top number one vulnerability, the cache deception one, was one that really came into the public consciousness just a couple years ago. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't understand how it works. Web cache deception.
Yeah, so I have sort of a rudimentary understanding of it. Essentially, a lot of websites will cache a certain amount of information on a website to reduce load times and stuff like that. And you can essentially use that functionality as a hacker to harvest stuff like used passwords, hard-coded credentials, cookies, session IDs, stuff like that, save credit card info, by in effect causing users to follow a sort of a redirect. So, I think that you can even, I'm not 100% on this because I haven't tried it, but I think you can even use it to seed malicious code onto victims' machines. So,
okay, I know
pretty powerful.
I've seen some web cache poisoning attacks, but they're very rare and hard to implement. This may be something new.
Yeah, this has only become something that's been a thing. I think 2017 was when the first demos and write-ups about it came out.
Yeah. All right.
So it's reasonably newish.
Yeah. So let's make sure.
It's an interesting way to get at systems. You already have the cache, and now let's just hit that instead.
Yeah.
Forget trying to hit the user and trying to trick them. Let's just hit their cache.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, looks like I got an internet problem. Oh, there we go. Is the Collylytics page come up?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you've got this one, Irvin.
This one made me mad.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. This one made me mad. Scroll down to the picture. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you see any of these things, or you have a child who thinks they're hacking, let us know so we can give them advice, engage in positive diversions. What the heck?
I saw this article too. I almost picked this for one of mine. It's so good. And especially show me a teenager that doesn't have Discord on their machine. They all use Discord.
Right. That's what they used to talk for gaming.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm as usual, I take the fascist side. I mean, they've kind of got a point here. This is kind of why we teach hacking. So people can have a somewhat safe environment to learn this. And a lot of this stuff is just used for hacking, like Collie and the Wi-Fi Pineapple. There's no question if they got that stuff, they're doing hacking.
Yeah, well, it seems a little alarmist, and it seems like cops don't really have a whole. I think this is a classic case of a little information's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
They know just enough to think they know, but they don't really know.
Right. That was my point with this is you don't have all the information, so you're spreading misinformation out to everybody. I mean, we're out here trying to educate our communities, and you throw this out, like, great, thanks.
Well, I guess, I don't know. I don't know, where do you
Make
want,
our lives harder.
where do you want to send them? Noise Bridge? I mean, I, I don't know. It depends on how good these people you go to are at dealing with them. If they would send them here, I could help them.
Right? Exactly. Bring them our way. We'll help them. It's funny that right below that, the NCA, that National Crime Agency, sent out a tweet saying we're not involved in this.
Oh, well, see, if that's the part, the rest of this is not entirely bad. If they would put a link down here that would lead you to somebody that would take you to like a cyber patriot or something like that, which is what you need.
That's a good
Right.
point. Though I think maybe this shows me that maybe the cops need some re-education as well.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, they're bottling this after like clues that your kid is on drugs or something, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some truth to that comparison too. I remember the first time I taught a hacking class, there was a guy who said, I was #1 on like one of those hacking bulletin boards, and then cops nearly caught me, so I gave it up. But then I saw your class, and now I'm going to start it up again. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is quite what I wanted. But he did go straight and get a job at, get a degree at UC Berkeley and stuff and move on. So anyway, this one got my attention because I've been involved in this blockchain voting for a while. So Votes is this group that sells a blockchain voting app, and they've actually gotten it used in several
The
elections.
United States is a democracy, which means everyone gets to vote.
Well, more or less. Anyway, so anyway, they wrote it. These are MIT researchers, and they analyzed this thing, and they found that it has various flaws that don't sound too critical as web app flaws go, but it's no better than other web apps. And one of the things they noticed is that it doesn't use the blockchain at all. It just has a normal API, and whatever goes to the blockchain must be after that. And that's the thing I noticed when I made a blockchain voting app, is that the blockchain doesn't actually solve any of the major problems of voting. All it does is make it easier to count the votes later, but all the fraud happens before you get on the blockchain. So it doesn't actually make it secure. And these votes guys, I saw them years ago in 2018. They had some really stupid responses when people found flaws in 2018. They would just report like a Qualys SSL report saying our security certificate is secure. That makes us secure, right? And this is the kind of stuff that people have no clue about security will do, is think you can just put on one layer of protection and that solves everything. But this one is actually not as bad a response as usual. They say that they were using a 27 version, old version, and they said we're on a bug bounty program, and you could have gone to the bug bounty program and got our source code and reviewed that. But instead they took a public old version of the Android app and reverse engineered it and guessed what it should be and stuff. And they say, why didn't you just go on the bug bounty program and get the source code, which is a pretty good response. They've had some really stupid responses in the past, but it looks to me like over the last couple of years, they've begun to know a little bit more about security. However, I think I agree with Matt Blaze that you're out of your mind. Internet voting is never going to be secure. The whole internet is way too insecure for this. But these guys have certainly matured a bit over 2 years. Anyway, it's a real important issue.
Yeah.
And people are using it, but only in very small, limited ways. Like this was just for people that are out of the country or something like that. So anyway, there are some people that want to go to internet voting. And of course, this all came about because of the hanging chads. That was why they pushed computerized voting as an improvement. And it turned out not so much. Anyway, so Liz has this one about against banning facial recognition, which is not the usual thing you hear these days.
Well, it's not necessarily against it. I just thought this was a really good sort of editorial piece on why, it's sort of like there are a lot of well-intentioned laws against banning facial recognition, but that's not really the root of the problem. I mean, yeah, it's part of the problem, but it's not really what's the scariest part of privacy violations. And I think that this article does a really good job of illustrating what the root of the issue is, which is that there's all this data about us out there in the world floating around, and it's really easy to connect the data to the individual from which it's sourced. a lot of these companies don't bother at all to anonymize or strip out identifying info on data. And even when they do, you know, we've talked about researchers in the past who've been able to kind of connect the dots with a fairly small set of data on a user. So, I mean, that's really, you know, you can ban facial recognition, and that's good, all well and good, but it doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I like, this is Bruce Schneier, and he's always a class act. And I think this is the point. What we need is GDPR. We really need restrictions on what you're allowed to do with data, because there's tons of data out there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the way that we gather data just keeps increasing anyway. Like, if not one way, we'll find another.
Yeah.
The data and people and connect it together.
Well, in California, now we have a law that doesn't take effect for a few months. So
yeah, and so I'm curious to see how that is going to be enforced exactly.
Well, it supposedly took effect in January, but they said there'll be no enforcement until July. And most companies have done nothing to prepare. So we'll see what it turns into.
Well, once July rolls around, how's it going to get enforced anyway? By the data cops? Like, you know, what?
Well, these kind of civil laws usually just get enforced by people that sue. So you could sue Facebook or somebody for collecting too much data or something. The other thing is it requires you to have things like erasing your data and revealing your data. So they have to reply to these requests. You were trying to get your data, Liz. Did you ever get it?
Oh, no, I haven't. I have, however, sent them copies of my passport, my ID, pictures of my face in making various expressions. And so far, none of this is enough to validate my identity, apparently.
So they just get more data. This sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They just got more data.
Yep. Okay. Well,
apparently I need to send my fingerprints and family tree in now.
Well, after July,
maybe a DNA sample.
Yeah, right. You need some DNA sample into that too.
Well, I guess after July, you can complain about that and maybe something will be done. Or maybe you could win some money in court or something. I don't know. Anyway, I saw this. Puerto Rico loses 2.6 million.
Yep, in a phishing scam that they don't want to say how it happened.
Ah.
Wow.
No detail.
The money was transferred on January 17, so a month later this news came out. But they don't want to say who was the one who got scammed and have they fired that person. They don't want to give out any info.
Wow.
Well, it's going to be investigated until the last consequences. You know, this sounds like the Chinese health minister explaining what they're doing about coronavirus. It was the same double talk, you know. Yeah, I cannot speculate about how these things might happen. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So, sounds like somebody doesn't want to admit they're guilty here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
2.6 million.
It mentioned at the end that they had to cut back on some services. Apparently, like securing them is one of those services.
I imagine. Well, anyway, I thought this was pretty fun. There's an SSH server, and when you connect with SSH, it figures out who you are. And what this does is it uses a known property of SSH, which you know you can SSH in with a key. And every time you connect to an SSH server, it sends all your public keys to that server to see if any of them will match. And your public keys on GitHub are public information. GitHub publishes everybody's public key. So you can just get all your keys and then check them against that list and find your GitHub name every time you connect to an SSH server. So that's pretty interesting. And I found a nice write-up of the vulnerability here from a few months ago. It was quite useful. So SSH by default just sends all your public keys up, which seems a little odd to me, but anyway, that is how it works. And this is another thing, GitHub just reveals it this way, they say, or at least it used to. So if you SSH into GitHub, anybody can find out who you are. So I think this is a thing people should realize, that SSH is a confidentiality scheme, but it is not a anonymization scheme. And a lot of people might make that mistake. And even if you run it over Tor or something, this would reveal who you are. So I'm thinking this could actually be very useful for finding criminals and de-anonymizing Tor and such. SSHing over Tor kind of undoes the
Right.
benefit of Tor. That's pretty awesome. This might have interesting consequences. Anyway.
Though,
Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, I think that the way around this would just be to use a virtual machine.
Not if you use the same SSH.
Well, no, because they're saying you're uploading all the keys, right?
Yeah.
But
So you have to
if
use
you
a
don't
machine
have-
that has no keys tied to any of your other accounts. So you'd have to basically have cubes.
Right.
Or use a different machine for
Exactly.
each type of connection. That's pretty painful. It does seem like
Yeah.
SSH really, maybe there's another command line switch or something to only send the one key. If not, there should be.
That's interesting. Yeah. That makes me wonder if there is one.
If not, you certainly could add it. I made a modified SSH years ago just to make a honeypot and steal the passwords. It's really easy to modify SSH. The code is pretty
That's a
simple.
good idea.
Yeah, you could just,
Yeah.
you could fork SSH and make it identity preserving version of it. Anyway, I thought that was fun. And here's people ditching RSA because of coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons to do it, but this was a novel reason to ditch it. I thought, IBM is one of their big sponsors too, and they pulled out right at the end, which I thought was interesting because they must have dumped a ton of money into doing that.
And why did they have to pull out RSA? They think San Francisco's a hotbed of coronavirus. We have like what, 5 cases or something?
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, I guess I get it from a vector standpoint. There's all those people walking around, but I don't know. It was interesting to me that such a establishment company would pull out over that. They're one of the what did it say? A platinum sponsor, and I can't remember how much money it costs. I saw a figure for how much money it costs to do that, and it was a lot. I can't remember how much it was, but it was a ton of cash, which I imagine they must just forfeit it. So,
well, if it was up to me,
Yikes.
I would hold the conference and say this now has the real risk analysis people that can evaluate how low the risk is. And the rest are too stupid to be here anyway. So I go to B-Sides, which is at the same time. They didn't cancel B-Sides. So I would say it's because the people at B-Sides are not this stupid. That's my theory. I think this is just me hysteria. I mean, you should be able to evaluate the risk if you're in this business. What's wrong with you? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was weird, but it also made me wonder if other companies are going to do that too. So
This is it is ridiculous. I see so many of these things. People jump on the bandwagon, and then they all just have to do it because somebody else is doing it, even though it doesn't based on any rationality. Oh well. Of course, we quit. You and I did RSA for a couple of years, and we quit because it sucked. But that's a different issue.
yeah, like I said, this was just a novel reason to cancel it. I signed up for a pass this time, but I'm like, do I really want to go to that?
Well, I mean,
I don't think so.
I workshops a couple times, but they kept on messing up the venue with like no internet or something to where it wasn't a good workshop. And I said, well, there's no point. Black Hat is so much better. A nice professional setup. Everything works. Anyway.
Last year was terrible. Like, how are you going to have a hands-on workshop with no internet?
And those are even penniless cons like B-Sides and DEF CON have perfectly good enough internet. You can get the job done. But I mean, the attendees are miserable. And I said, there's no point putting on a workshop if people aren't going to enjoy it. Anyway, all right. And so we got, another bug from Microsoft. Yes.
Another bug from Microsoft that did not allow you to turn off or restart your computer.
Was this because?
But it wasn't Windows necessarily at fault. It was Adobe Creative Cloud who was behind that shutdown issue.
Wow.
Oh.
So you have to do a couple steps in your services in order to do it. But yeah,
now,
get around the fix.
I heard the Windows update was breaking things, but this is the Adobe update. Yeah, okay.
Right. I mean, they did pull a different Windows update that was doing freezes, boot problems, and had some other install issues. But the one specific to you not having permission to shut down or restart your computer looks like it stemmed from Adobe.
Yeah. This
I
reminds me.
just had a visit from a non-technical friend this weekend who was insisting that she needed a Windows machine so that she could run Adobe Suite because that would be the only thing that would just work.
Huh.
Maybe not
That's
so
awesome.
much.
Yeah, well,
Right?
I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, I had a student who was a tech at a company with like 2,000 machines. And that was when I think McAfee had the update that killed an essential Windows system file, killing your machine. And the
Yes. Right.
only cure was to carry a CD to each machine one by one and boot from that. And there was no way to do it over the network or anything.
I remember that. That was a fun day.
Yeah. All right. And here, the Bracelet of Silence. I thought this was great. And this is Kashmir Hill, who's really a star in this privacy thing. She's really getting famous for this stuff. So they built this bracelet, which puts out hypersonic sounds. So they say everybody's got Alexa and a Google listening device everywhere. And what if you want your privacy? So you wear this and it screams and shuts up all those smart speakers. So that's not a bad idea. It's like when we went to DEF CON China, they gave us a special t-shirt with reflectors on it that will supposedly stop face recognition, the same kind of thing.
Yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you really need to take some way to protect yourself because people around you might have these gadgets like the Google Glass and stuff. And you ought to have some way to opt out, and just yelling at all of them to knock it off is not an effective way to deal with it.
I wonder if
Right.
this will drive small children and dogs insane.
There's always some collateral damage from any security technology. You have to accept some problems. Well, anyway, any more comments about anything?
No.
Well, that makes me wonder if anything could be done with infrasound. You know, if any of those technologies have the ability to read infrasound.
Yeah, of course, you could just make it so it doesn't hear the ultrasound, and that would protect it from this. You don't really need to hear the whole audio range. In fact, telephones don't. Telephones only have like 3,000 to 300 to 3,000 hertz. They really only have a small range. So you could design a smart speaker to protect against this. Anyway.
Huh. Yeah, that's true too. Interesting.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.